Greetings. I've already talked about a kind of new left, and other people have talked about that Sargon of Akkad and what have you, but I wanted to take the time to go into greater depth on the fractures and ruptures on the left side of the continuum of the political spectrum. And I want to talk about some things that some people have not addressed specifically. But before I go into that, for those of you who don't know, continually over the past 3, 4 years, perhaps, I'd say 4, maybe even 5 years, there have been little splints, fractures in what at some point in time had been seen or perceived to be a unassailable continuum of unanimity of voice in the left hemisphere of the political sphere. And this has been unraveling. Increasingly, there are people who position themselves on the moderate side of things, the moderate left. Sometimes they're called left of center, although I don't think that's necessarily coterminous with moderate left. And progressives. Progressive is a term they use for themselves. And the pseudo-neologism, regressives. Of course, regressive is not a neologism in itself, but the way it's being applied to progressives, I would say it is, in some sense, semantically at least. And this has been expanding and becoming greater and greater and greater. Essentially, the more lunacy the extreme left or the regressives show to us and display. On the other side of the coin, or on the other hemisphere of the great sphere, we have the right. Now, one thing that people have not really mentioned is that the traditional black and white distinction that many people on the extreme end of the right like to use when depicting and portraying quote-unquote liberals or people on the left is, as a consequence of this, going to suffer. Or rather, they're going to lack the ability to engage in this sort of thing with any sort of intellectual honesty anymore. Now, as probably all of you know by now, I'm neither on the left nor the right. I'm an observer, primarily. I certainly have political opinions. I often voice them. I've made videos about them, and many of you know my views. But I would not qualify myself as a rightist or a leftist, although I've been called both on all extreme ends and everything in between. But I feel a need to restate that in every video because I really have no horse in this race per se. But we all know the type of extreme right-wing person who says, oh, leftists, leftists, leftists everywhere, leftists under my bed, leftists in my toilet, leftists up my ass, this sort of thing. For them to claim, for example, that there's no distinction between a moderate liberal or a moderate left person who combats regressivism, if you will, and a regressive or progressive, whatever the hell they want to call themselves, is absurd, frankly speaking. To date, there's so much evidence to show that there are serious differences between these people. And of course, you have people who are, right of center as well. In reality, to some extent, none of these things are new. The differences we see only appear to be new because they're becoming more and more pronounced as time goes by. And frankly speaking, because those regressives or progressives are becoming ever more crazy and lunatic in their efforts and the things they're saying. And thus the resistance grows. But I see a kind of potential here beyond the fractiousness of politics. I've mentioned the possibility in the past of some sort of alliance between the right, or certain members of the right and the left. Certainly, certain people are willing to discuss things. There are conservative radio or YouTube hosts and guys like Yiannopoulos and what have you who fall to the right end of the spectrum, who are willing to talk to self-declared leftists like Sargon of Akkad and some others on issues. But I'm not hopeful. I want to qualify this. Before I say anything, I'm not hopeful. I'm not optimistic. I never am. I mean, when you know humanity a bit, there really isn't that much reason to be optimistic. at least about certain things. But I'm seeing a possibility of something beyond the political here, beyond the black and white. I don't think political differences in themselves will ever be resolved, which is to say that politics, unless we firmly understand human nature, and we've taken great steps in doing so, but there's still many mysteries that remain, until we've completely locked down human nature in all its various iterations and expressions, it's going to be impossible to create a perfect body politic, if you will. But one very positive possibility that can arise from all of this mess and the many fractures, is the creation of a new kind of devotion or a new loyalty to facts, reason, and rationality. Or, more simply put, the desire to understand the world. Now, the desire to understand the world can be something that can transcend politics. I know for myself, I assign greater importance to understanding the world, and I leave whatever political opinions I have behind when I'm trying to understand something. Now, we're all imperfect, and certainly I might falter occasionally, but it's not for want of trying to stick to the facts. The primary weapon of regressives is obfuscation, obscurantism, the desire to just hide things. And everyone engages in this to a degree. But one positive thing that might well arise, as I said, is a desire to essentially pursue scientific truth and understand the world as it is, and let the politics fall by the wayside. People can have political opinions, but when you really look at the differences between the regressive left and the moderate left, there don't seem to be too many differences in policy. I mean, there might be some specifics, but their disagreements aren't over how much welfare the state should offer, or how do we feed more single mothers, or what have you, although that certainly feeds into it to a bit. It's more about the blatant misrepresentation of reality and facts and statistics on the part of the regressives. So it seems to me, more than being a expression of some kind of leftism, the desire to combat regressivism is something that is almost external to politics. I mean, if you take someone like Teal Deer, who I'm not personally acquainted with him. I don't think he would ever declare himself to be on the left. If anything, I think he's more sympathetic to sort of rightish libertarian stuff, but don't quote me on that. I mean, he's about just debunking things and pointing out facts. And even Sargon of Akkad, who is a declared leftist, if you want to use that term, tends to just focus on what's correct and what's accurate, as much as one can, using satire. The desire to transcend reality, which is something progressives like to do, or attempt to do, is something that ultimately is damaging. Humanity and human beings cannot progress unless they actually understand reality as it is, and human beings as they are. Men, women, races, ethnicity, all these things are important, but in the desire to obscure, which, if I'm to offer charitable interpretation, is born of fear. That is, if we tell the truth about women, or differences in ethnicity, or differences in culture. I will be making a video on cultural clashes soon, once my internet is back officially, going more into that. But if we just say that, we're all the same and there are no differences, that certainly can give some people a feel-good feeling. We're all the same. We're all in the same boat. And in some sense, we are all in the same boat. We're all not so developed apes crawling about on this mud ball. But the desire to obscure that actually leads to regressivism, which is what we've been seeing. And so I think the neologism is somewhat apt. progressive, what they call themselves progressives, which is to me synonymous with this obscurantism, the reality is that term is completely false. By hiding reality, we hinder ourselves, and we hinder ourselves from further development, be it in medicine, social interaction, and indeed politics. For example, as I mentioned before, what would be the formula, or what would be the formulae required to create a perfect body of politics, or a perfect set of principles or policies? Well, that would be one that would take into account just about everything possible and all the differences between human beings. Differences in ethnicity, differences in geography, differences in sex, differences in age. I mean, it's a Herculean task to say the least, and it's probably impossible. But if we wanted to have a more accurate representation of human interest, we can only do that if we understand human beings. And saying that everyone is the same and that we're all identical and all our wishes are the same and blah, blah, blah doesn't help. And so I actually see the fractiousness of the left as being something that goes beyond the political, and it's become more a crusade for truth, if you will. Now, that's a bit melodramatic, I suppose, but there's some kernel of truth to that. And inasmuch as people on the right are interested in that as well, and some people are, I mean, ultimately, if you align with a political faction, you're going to probably be doing something to push an agenda. That is to say, you're going to be pushing the political agenda and using facts to back up your agenda rather than just being interested in the facts and then drawing conclusions from them. But nonetheless, the net result of all of this, and I think we're going to see more and more of this, is people who are just interested in having reality as well represented and as accurately represented as possible, as opposed to going on and on about political differences, and in the extreme case of regressives, obscuring and hiding, attempting at least to hide truth. To be fair, and I've said this before though, a lot of these regressives, such as Anita Sarkeesian, are just charlatans. It's clear that she doesn't believe anything she says. She found a way to make a quick buck and a way to continue making quick bucks, and that's what she's doing. You can almost kind of respect her in her cynicism. There are some people that actually believe this stuff, though. You just you need only head over to the BSN, the BioWare Social Network, and you'll find lots of these people. So, as I draw my conclusion, I think this is something going beyond the political. I think what's going to result here ultimately, possibly at least, I hope so, I hate using the word hope, is a devotion to understanding reality, science, truth, facts, and human beings as they are, without the paint job, without trying to adorn us and give us plumage to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Feel-goodism has never, ever, ever helped human beings in actual progress. It might have been, feel-goodism has helped human beings to feel good at a moment, to lead lives of deception and delusion, say as in the case of religion, and some other things, but it hasn't actually led to human progress as we know it. And so one can hope that one net benefit to the fractiousness of the left and the sundering of political divisions is that a new devotion to understanding scientific reality arises from this with no political allegiance left or right whatsoever. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I do apologize. My internet is essentially non-existent. I'm recording this from a non-internet accessed home at the moment, and I'll have to engage in a lot of walking to cafes with Wi-Fi in order to upload this. So if uploads are infrequent, it's because this problem needs to be sorted. I've spoken to the landlord, and if the gods are with me, they will be sorted. I have a number of videos that require research that I want to make, and it's very difficult to do that when you don't have internet. So everyone take care. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again, hopefully, if I'm still alive and my internet is up, the next time. May Zeus watch over you. Bye-bye.